What if I told you that the way to make a narcissist truly feel the pain they once inflicted on you is not by shouting, not by seeking revenge, and not even by exposing them to everyone? Would you believe it? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And never has this statement been more true than when we look into the mind of a narcissist. Because what they fear the most is not your resistance, but your absolute absence. Their entire existence is built upon a fragile mask the persona carefully crafted to conceal the emptiness within. They survive by draining energy from others, by imitating your personality, and by projecting their disowned shadow onto you. And when you walk away, not halfway, but completely, you force them to confront the void they have spent their whole life running from. In this video, we will decode how you can do exactly that, how reclaiming yourself with such power can shatter the narcissist's false mask, leaving them face to face with their own abyss. Stay until the end, because not only will you discover why absence is the most powerful weapon, but also, through Carl Jung's lens, why this collapse becomes inevitable once you leave. Part 1. The brutal truth a narcissist never wants to hear. There is a truth that most people entangled in relationships with narcissists rarely anticipate. What hurts them the most is not when you expose them, nor when you fight back, but when you completely withdraw. That's right, your absolute absence is their greatest nightmare. Carl Jung once said, "Man wears a mask in order to be accepted by society, but that mask is never the true essence of who we are." For the narcissist, the mask, the persona, is not just a role. It is their entire existence. They wear a dazzling armor, a carefully crafted image, to conceal the terrifying emptiness within. And it is only when you disappear that this mask begins to truly crack. Imagine this. Throughout the relationship, they survive by feeding on your energy. Every reaction, your arguments, your anger, even your tears, becomes fuel to sustain their illusion of control. That is why they constantly try to provoke your emotions. But when you fall silent, when you stop reacting altogether, you do the one thing they cannot bear: you cut off their supply. For an ordinary person, distance may simply serve as a time for reflection, healing, or rediscovery. But for a narcissist, it feels like being cut off from oxygen. They do not have a genuine sense of self. Everything they display is a patchwork borrowed from others. They mimic your words, adopt your habits, even imitate your smile. Jung called this shadow projection. Instead of facing their own inner darkness, they hurl it outward, pinning it on you, turning you into the mirror that both fuels them and absorbs the weakness and emptiness they refuse to acknowledge. This is why, when you walk away, you are not merely leaving a relationship. You are taking with you all the fragments they used to construct their false self. And when that mask falls, they are confronted with a brutal reality. Without you, they are nothing. Remember this. To a narcissist, your attention, whether positive or negative, is their spiritual food. The more you rage, the more they feel alive. The more you demand answers, the more powerful they feel. But when you disappear in silence, leaving no opening, you force them to confront the vast emptiness inside. This is exactly what Jung described. The shadow that we avoid will become the fate that controls us. Narcissists spend their entire lives running from their shadow, but when you are no longer there, it consumes them. You may be surprised to realize that sometimes silence is stronger than 1,000 accusations. It becomes an invisible mirror, reflecting back their true nature. Without you, they cannot continue the game. Without you, the stage collapses, the curtain falls, and the main actor is left alone in the void. But here is the deeper point. This is not about making them suffer. It is about liberating yourself. Because only when you stop being someone else's supply can you return to the path of individuation that Carl Jung emphasized, the journey of becoming your truest self. And that is the essence. The brutal truth is this: a narcissist can never truly accept your absence because they have never been able to accept themselves. And that is why, when you choose silence, they collapse. But at the same time, when you choose silence, you rise. You step out of the cycle of manipulation, break free from the grip of the false persona, and begin building a life grounded in your own authentic value. In other words, while your absence feels like death to the narcissist, it is your rebirth. Part 2. When you disappear, they lose themselves. If in the previous part we saw that absolute silence is the weapon that wounds the narcissist most deeply, then here, let's go deeper. Why does your disappearance cause their collapse? The first thing to understand is this. A narcissist does not have an independent self. They are like an empty mirror, only reflecting the image of others. From the way they dress, speak, down to the smallest habits, they observe you, imitate you, and gradually wear your identity as if it were their own essence. Jung called this living through the persona, a mask borrowed and stitched together from outside fragments, yet clung to as though it were their whole being. But it goes beyond imitation. They also appropriate. When a narcissist repeats your words, adopts your style, or boasts about ideas they stole from you, they genuinely believe those things are theirs. They swallow your identity and turn it into an extension of their false self. Carl Jung pointed out that when a person refuses to accept their shadow, they will project it onto others. For the narcissist, this becomes extreme. The parts of themselves they deny insecurity, weakness, worthlessness are imposed onto you. At the same time, your strengths, creativity, kindness, independence, they try to steal and wear as their own. Denying their darkness while stealing another's light, they live in a distorted loop where nothing truly belongs to them. And this is why, when you disappear, the entire false structure collapses. You are not just leaving a relationship, you are pulling away the very foundation on which they built their imaginary self. That is why your absolute silence is unlike any other form of rejection. It doesn't just hurt them, it dismantles them. Picture a house built on sand. Every gesture, every word, every habit of yours is a grain of sand they gathered to construct their house. When you take those grains away, the house crumbles instantly. They no longer know who they are, because their self was never more than a reflection of you. This explains why narcissists often come back, desperately trying to pull you into the cycle again. Only when you are present do they still have fuel. Conversely, when you walk away, they are forced to face a painful truth. Inside them lies nothing but emptiness. Jung called this failure in the process of individuation. While a healthy person learns to integrate both light and shadow to become whole, the narcissist remains trapped in a borrowed persona. They have never dared to face their shadow, and thus never discovered their true self. The irony is this: it is precisely because you are vibrant, full of identity and life, that they chose you. They sensed in you the energy they lacked, and they clung to you like a parched wanderer in the desert. But the truth is, no one can endlessly supply someone who is bottomless. The more you give, the more drained you become, while they grow ever more addicted and dependent. That is why, when you leave, they lose everything. Not just the loss of a relationship, but the collapse of the entire false self they built from you. It may sound cruel, but it is in fact an inevitable consequence. Jung once said, "What we deny will eventually control us." The narcissist denied their true self, denied their shadow, and lived through what they borrowed from you. When you disappear, they are left with nothing but the very shadow they feared, a cold, dark void they spent their whole life avoiding. For you, it may be an initial pain, a tearing apart as you cut ties, but for them, it is the disintegration of their being. And in this difference, you must recognize something crucial. Your silence is not about punishing them, it is about saving yourself. In summary, you disappear to they lose themselves. You stop reacting to their persona cracks. You stay silent to their shadow rises. And in that moment, the harsh truth is revealed. The narcissist never had a true self. They were only a patchwork made from you and from everyone else they ever exploited. Part 3. The inevitable collapse. Perhaps you've asked yourself, does my silence really change them? or does it just make them angry for a while? The answer is this. Silence does not merely anger a narcissist. It pulls them into an existential crisis, a collapse that cannot be avoided. Carl Jung emphasized, the shadow we deny will always return, and in the end, it will dominate us. For the narcissist, the moment you disappear is the moment that shadow descends. Throughout the relationship, they have fled from their inner emptiness by clinging to you. Every word, every reaction, every emotion you gave them served as scraps they used to patch together their hollow soul. But when you go silent, that source of nourishment vanishes in an instant, and for the first time in their life, they are forced to face themselves. And what do they find? Not strength, not a true self, but a cold, invisible void that swallows them from within. A healthy person can endure loneliness because within them exists a real sense of self, a being formed through experience, values, and the integration of both light and shadow. But the narcissist never had such a self. Their entire existence is only the persona, a mask crafted to impress, manipulate, and survive. And when there is no one left to reflect it back, the mask falls away. This is the moment of collapse, not because you punished them, but because your absence stripped away their only oxygen supply. You no longer argue, no longer plead, no longer react, which means you are no longer the audience for their theater. And for someone who can only exist on stage, losing the audience means the play comes to an end. Jung compared human psychological growth to a journey moving from persona toward the true self by confronting the shadow. But the narcissist has never walked this path. They remain stuck in the persona, denying the shadow, and thus never reaching individuation. When you step away, they are left with no choice but to face the very thing they fear most, the shadow they've avoided all their life. How does this collapse usually appear on the outside? Some spiral into panic, desperately reaching out, begging, or even threatening. Some fall into silence and lose control, like a lost child who no longer knows who they are. Some rush to find a new supply, but the more they run, the deeper they sink into emptiness. The forms differ, but the essence is the same. They collapse because they cannot endure your silence. Here lies the paradox you must remember. As long as you argue, rage, or torment yourself, you are still giving them existence. You are still feeding the false persona. But when you vanish completely, when you stop being the supply, you take away their only foundation. Collapse then becomes inevitable. Imagine a puppet being pulled by strings on stage. As long as the hand pulls the strings, the puppet seems alive. But when the hand lets go, it is nothing more than a piece of wood lying lifeless. To the narcissist, you are that hand. And when you release the strings, they return to their essence, an empty shell. This may sound cruel, but in truth, it is law. No one can keep breathing life into someone who refuses to grow a soul. Jung warned that if a person refuses the journey of facing the shadow, they will eventually be consumed by it. And your silence is the mirror that forces the narcissist to see that truth. For them, it is collapse. For you, it is rebirth. Each day you remain silent, you reclaim more of your own power. Each step you take away from them, you step closer to individuation, becoming your full and free self. And that is the essential difference. Your absence makes them disintegrate, but your absence makes you grow. This is the beautiful paradox of psychology. While the narcissist withers in your silence, you are reborn through it. In summary, the moment you leave, their persona collapses. Your silence is the mirror that reveals the shadow. Your absence is their sentence, but your liberation. Part 4. When they collapse, you rise. In the end, you will come to realize a truth that at first may seem hard to believe. Your silence is not an act of revenge against the narcissist. It is a doorway to rebirth, a doorway opening for you. When a narcissist collapses, that is no longer your story. They are left to face the shadow they have denied all their life. They are forced to see the emptiness within because you are no longer there to serve as their mirror. But while they descend into the abyss, you begin a completely different journey, the journey of reclaiming yourself. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that is exactly what lies ahead of you. Because throughout your relationship with the narcissist, pieces of your identity were taken away. From your interests, your habits, to the way you valued yourself, all were distorted, possessed, or made to feel not enough. But when you leave, those fragments begin to return. For the first time in years, you can ask yourself, what truly belongs to me? Who am I beyond being someone else's supply? These questions may feel frightening and confusing, but they are also signs that you are stepping into the process of individuation, the journey Jung described as the heart of true psychological growth. On this path, you learn to embrace both your light and your darkness. You no longer have to play the healer for someone who never wanted to heal. You no longer have to suppress your anger or your pain just to keep the peace. Instead, you allow yourself to be authentic. Authentic in joy, authentic in sorrow, authentic in vulnerability, and authentic in the hidden strength you have never fully tapped into. This is when you realize silence not only strips the narcissist of their supply, it also gives you back your power. The power to freely choose your own path. The power to redefine what you love without their control or imitation. The power to stand in your own light instead of being reduced to someone else's shadow. The miracle is this: every small step you take to reclaim yourself is also another collapse for them. When you change your music taste, read new books, rearrange your living space, or pursue a dream they once mocked, you send out an invisible message: I am no longer yours. I belong to myself. And with every step, the narcissist loses another piece they once used to maintain their false self. The difference now is clear. They lose when you are silent. You are reborn through that silence. This is not a simple symmetry of they hurt, you rejoice. These are two entirely separate paths. They spiral deeper into emptiness while you step into the light of a new life. And most importantly, you do not need to witness their collapse to feel healed. You do not need to know how much they suffer or whether they sit alone in a dark room, because your journey is no longer tied to theirs. The truth is, only when you stop obsessing over their downfall do you become truly free. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that is what you have done. By choosing silence, you faced your own inner darkness. The fear of loneliness, the fear of loss, the fear of not being enough. You overcame the illusion that you had to stay and save them. And that is what makes you whole. So understand this: their collapse is not your victory. Your true victory is your rising. You win not because they lose, but because you have stepped out of the toxic game of power. You win because you dared to reclaim yourself. Leave them with the shadow they created, and you continue your journey, the journey of rebirth, the journey back to your whole and authentic self. With every step, you will see that while they lose their false identity, you grow ever more genuine, free, and powerful. In summary, silence is not revenge, it is rebirth. As they collapse, you begin the journey of individuation. You do not need to witness their pain, you only need to live your own path fully. And that is the real victory, your rising. When we reach the end of this journey, we uncover a profound paradox. What causes the narcissist the greatest pain is the very thing that grants you the greatest freedom. Your absence is their nightmare, but it is your doorway to liberation. When you withdraw, they face the collapse of their false persona. But you begin the journey back to your authentic self. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And silence is the very first step in reclaiming that privilege. Because silence does not mean weakness, nor does it mean defeat. Silence here is a deliberate choice, a declaration. I am no longer someone else's supply. I belong to myself. You will find that with each day apart from them, you gradually reclaim small pieces of yourself. A habit you once loved, a passion that was mocked, a dream you once abandoned, all begin to return. This is not merely recovery, it is rebirth. And as you are reborn, you become a living mirror for others, those still trapped in toxic cycles, showing them that there is a way out. While they collapse into emptiness, you step into the light. While they lose piece by piece of their borrowed self, you rediscover your whole identity. Silence becomes a boundary carved in stone. On one side, the narcissist's downfall. On the other, your growth and peace. And remember, true victory does not lie in watching them suffer. True victory is found when you stand strong, when you heal, and when you are no longer bound by the old psychological games. That is the moment you do more than survive. You begin to live a life where you are the center, not someone else's shadow. If today's message resonated with you, don't forget to hit the like button, share your experience in the comments, and subscribe with the notification bell, TOT. Here, we will continue to explore Carl Jung's profound insights to understand the narcissist more deeply and, most importantly, to help you rebuild your life with true strength and freedom. Stay with us on this journey, because when you rise, the darkness loses its power, and that marks the beginning of an entirely new chapter in your life.